Joining us for the last panel of the Expo.
Thank you for taking your time out to come and see us.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm quite pleased to see. So thank you. Hopefully you all had fun at the Expo. We did. It always a blast. Who's been here before to the Expo? Oh, excellent. A lot of people. Good. My name's Konn, and this is Beth. We are both self-published authors. I tend to specialize more in horror and fantasy novels, and Beth tends to do more of...
I do mini comics and comics in general, so there are some of the things that overlap and some of the things are different, so that's why we're going to be both here.
Yeah, so she's got some of the illustrative background to know some of the ins and outs for the comic world, and I know more of the literary world too, so we can offer some tidbits and feedback on the journey to self-publishing. And we're going to start at kind of like a entry level, a lot of how to get your piece published, and not so much about the marketing and moving onwards, because that's an ever-changing and evolving part of the industry. So so that's a bit about me as a background. Tend to write a lot of weird stuff, like my new one called Seed Me, and a fantasy series called Mental Damnation, which is ongoing. And it's been a long journey. I've been doing this, I'd say, professionally since 2011. Made a lot of mistakes that hopefully you will be able to avoid when you find out what I did. But yeah, that's a basic introduction to me. And I do graphics for a living. That's how I actually make bread and butter. This has not covered my total income yet, so that's the dream. But yeah, I'll let Beth introduce herself now too.
Sure. I didn't really bring any of my books. I mean, I have one of the things I usually work on, which is what is a mini comic? It's more of an instructional thing, but I span a lot of different genres. I do horror, I do fantasy, science fiction. It's kind of the nice thing about self-publishing is that you can kind of go from genre to genre. You don't have to stay and be kind of typecast in one specific genre. So, and with comics, you have more of an ability to kind of even then go outside of that and combine, so it's kind of nice that way.
Awesome. Yeah, and we're going to keep it pretty or kind of relaxed for this panel. Can ask each other questions and have people ask us questions as well. So if you've got any lingering questions that you haven't been able to get answers to, we can hopefully provide you some insight into that. And I'm going to start off by asking Beth a question. So how'd you get into self-publishing, and why'd you choose that route versus traditional means?
Well, for me, how I got started, I was actually, I just started on a forum, and it was way back in the day, called The Engine, and it was run by Warren Ellis, who did comics, and he was really helpful. He was trying to build his own fan base at the time, because he's a writer. He does traditional literary works and he does comics. And he was trying to build his own following, and he'd gotten a lot of other professionals in there and a lot of people who were just starting out in the industry. And so it was this nice kind of mix of fans, creators, everyone all together. And from there, people were starting to talk about self-publishing and things like that. And I've always wanted to do comics, but I wasn't really sure how to go about, breaking in. And so from there, they're like, well, yeah, you can just self-publish. And I was like, self-publish? Well, that sounds fantastic. I kind of like the idea of that. And I come from a bit of a design background myself. I'd taken some courses in it, so I kind of knew the fundamentals of how to do all the really, really niggly bits of actually doing layouts and everything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so you were able to kind of work with some of the software, because that's always a challenge, is working through the applications, whether you're using one of the Adobe products like InDesign or Microsoft Word, which can be done and can be very difficult. And then from there you just continued to work with comics then? Yeah,
and it was handy to have a design background. It's getting more and more, I find now though, that you can they have a lot of pre-built things for you. Like for example, when you're publishing to more places, they're easier to take things. Like you can use PDFs now, which you can always export from Word if you're just doing simple stuff, especially for literary and whatnot.
Yeah, and that's kind of nice. I guess I want to raise some hands. Who is interested in like writing literary?
Okay.
Quite a few. Who's comics?
There we go.
There's awesome, cool. So yeah, like we were saying with Microsoft Word, it's quite nice because you can actually write up your full manuscript in a Word document and submit it to some of these online services like ebooks for Amazon, Lulu, and there's also templates available for print copies. So it makes it a lot easier rather than figuring out all the dimensions and how many pages. They can actually provide you this information. Something I did with my first self-published book was go through a service called Blurb. Really great, works good for illustrations and photos, and they're a Canadian company, so I thought it would be a good one to go with, but they would use a really high-end paper, so for literary pieces, when you've got these thick spines with a lot of paper, it costs a lot of money, and I ended up losing money with every book sale, so I made a big mistake on that. And after that, I actually found some other better services that are specialized for literary work and not so much photos or illustrations. And one of those was CreateSpace, one of Amazon's services. Lulu also offers one that I found to be quite effective as well. So there's different options out there, and being sure to research what type of print quality it is, because you might end up paying a lot more than what it's actually worth. So that's something to keep in mind.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but like when you're dealing with images, whether you're dealing with literary that has images in it, or if you're dealing with comics, you want to make sure that you're using a really nice high quality image, and you're going to need to go with like higher quality paper. For example, like this piece right here, like this is just like my throwaway piece that I kind of like hand out to people. But it's like written on bond paper, and as you can see, if you like look at it right away, you can see that it's all showing through, which is why you want to go with a heavier paper, which is a higher quality paper, so that you aren't having everything showing right through. And it's a bigger problem with pictures than it is with the writing, I find. For self-publishing, you can kind of comics. You can kind of use some of the ones that are used for literary, like Blurb is a good one. For Kindle, like for Amazon, there's actually now they've started putting out finally an actual download that you can use specifically for comics called Comic Creator.
Really?
Yeah, it's set up for that. So theoretically, it should work. However, please be warned that Amazon their background is in literary books, and so I remember when I first started trying to upload to CreateSpace, they're like, just send in your Word document. And I'm like, Word document's not gonna work with like, you can put images, but if you've ever tried doing, you can do theoretically layout in Word with images, not anytime fun though. And and yeah, you're super limited. It's not, because Word is not, it's not a page assembly program. Page assembly means that's how you create the pages. So you're like, putting and sticking things onto the page. That's not what Word is. All it is a word processor, a fancy typewriter for your computer. So that's something to keep in mind. You can put pictures in, but the amount of fighting and struggling and the frustration you're gonna find is just too much. Like, you're not gonna want it.
And that was called Comic Creator, hey?
Yeah, Comic Creator,
okay.
that should help. You're gonna need to do a lot of PDFs. What you can do for comics, if you don't have InDesign, you can kind of, if you have a scanner, you can scan in. Like there's tricks you can do. It's a little more challenging and really in depth. If anyone has questions, you can always ask me after the panel, because it'll get in depth, and we only have a very short period of time today.
Yeah. It's a good thing you brought up too, like with images, whether you're doing book covers or if it's a comic or something. Knowing the technicalities of the image. Print images work in CMYK, if you're not familiar with that. It's an actual color format versus RGB, which is light-based.
That's light-based, yeah.
So that's what comes off of screens for your monitors and cell phones. But with print, they use ink, and that is known as CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, key black, and yellow, if I recall.
Yes.
The black sheets.
Yeah.
It's called key.
Key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind. And if you are like drawing actual pictures and scanning them in, your scanner will have settings for what's known as DPI, dots per inch, which isn't good for pictures, for photos. Higher is better. 300 to 600 is a good range for printers because it'll actually get more of the detail. So when you actually print it from on the book, it'll actually come out quite clean and crisp.
Yeah, you really like, yeah, it's just, all I can say, oh, I forgot what I was going to say actually. But yeah, scanning is a big thing. Yeah, and what you'll find is if you try and go from an RGB, I just remember now, if you try and go from RGB directly to CMYK, you're going to find your colors are muddy. So if you've created that image, and a lot of times, a lot of your default programs will go with an RGB, make sure you've set it to CMYK. You also want to make sure that your monitor is calibrated. If you're working with images, you need to make sure your monitor is calibrated. Otherwise, you're going to get like some sort of mystery amount. Like you can have like grays and muds and everything like that if you aren't calibrating it. But yeah, CMYK to RGB. No. and you'll get some places like some places will tell you that you can use RGB, but you'll still get unexpected. It'll still convert for you, but the colors are way brown, like because you're doing color versus pigments are two totally different things. If you need more information about it, look up stuff on color theory. It'll help you kind of guide you along with that.
Yeah, so some stuff to keep in mind, and we can keep exploring more into this, but I was curious if anyone had any initial questions that are kind of on the back of their minds. You'll go first, yeah.
Mine's a little bit off topic, but I know if you self-publish through Amazon, you need a tax identification number for the US.
Yeah.
Apparently it's quite a lengthy process. Do you have any advice for like just your sanity's sake?
For sanity, I haven't done it because I don't want to go insane yet, but I've been told of some people who there are third-party services that act as your satellite office, and they take a small cut of your sales. I haven't looked into these directly. Might be able to find some online through other people that have found this as well. I wouldn't trust the Amazon form because it's not necessarily the way Amazon wants you to go about it, but you can have basically a United States company handle all the payment for you, and then they send it to you with like a 2% cut, kind of like the way PayPal or Square works. So other than the actual legit process of getting the tax number in the States, there's no real other way about it, unfortunately.
Well, you can also fill out the W-3 forms.
Oh.
Because they send them to you. They actually send forms to you that you can fill out. Yeah, and that way, I mean, you'd want to look at what the percentage of taxes are. They're going to be different in every state. I mean, the percentage you're going to get through going through a broker may actually even be more than just the W-3 form, because they'll send it to you. They'll be like, you can't sell to us unless you have this form filled out. And you just fill it out. I mean, and it shouldn't be a big deal. You don't necessarily need to start yourself a company until you've gotten to a certain established point. You can develop that after, because you can run yourself as a self-based business for a good chunk until you get to a certain amount of things. You want to look into, I mean, I'm not a tax professional, so I'm not giving you guys advice that way, but I would definitely look up Canada Revenue Service if you have questions about that, to go in more depth about it. But they do have the W-3 forms for you.
Yep.
For your written literature, how many words was your first published book?
First one actually was about 60,000. I got some advice from another author from the States, and he read my first manuscript, and he said it was fine, but it was about 160,000 words, and he said it's a big risk for a consumer to invest that amount of time in a new author. So smaller chunks actually works out better because it's quicker for them to take a chance on. So yeah, 60,000 I went for. So anywhere between 50 to 70 I found to be a safe zone to actually have your book more willing for people to buy.
But how many chapters do you have for that book as well?
In chapters? There were about 14 chapters. So each one was about 4,000 words, I think. Yeah. Yes.
Copywriting your ideas, does a company handle that, or do you have to go through a process of, this is my book, no one can so you can get your own trademark kind of thing on your ideas, or do you do that and self-publish?
With Canada specifically, if you made it, it's considered copywritten.
Yeah.
As a safe precaution, what I tend to do is I'll mail myself a burned copy on a CD of the digital files and don't open the envelope, so that envelope's been time-stamped.
Yeah.
And if worst case you end up having to go to court, you've got physical proof of that burned CD. So
Yeah, well, no,
yeah.
right notes. Like nowadays, I mean, if you look at your files when you're creating them, if you're creating them on a computer, they'll all be time-stamped automatically anyway.
Yes.
So you do have that. But yeah, back in the day, I mean, even back in the day, because my father was a writer, and so that's kind of where I learned a lot of my stuff. He would mail that, and he would mail it registered, so you had to actually sign it and everything too. But yeah, here, we're lucky in Canada because once you created it, it is yours, and then I believe there's like a certain amount of time after you die as well.
I think it's 50, and then it's a public
Yeah.
domain, if I
Yeah.
recall correctly.
Yeah, show them that.
Oh, yeah.
So how did you, especially in the first book, but with all your books, how do you go about marketing it?
Marketing, it's been a constant learning experiment. Social media has been a huge one. I use that frequently. A lot of it's been cold call sales, because with self-publishing, you're no longer just the creator, you're no longer just one type, you're wearing a bunch of hats, so you have to be the production artist, you have to be the marketing guy, the sales guy, and for a lot of actual physical stores, I started calling them up if they were out of town, but if they were in the city, I would go to that store and see if they would be willing to have it on commission. And online, it was a lot of contacting other authors, seeing if they would let me be a guest blog on their website. On my blog, I'll have guest authors once a month or so that way I'm giving back into the community as well. So it's just meeting other authors from online through social media, and that way I'm not just essentially begging people to buy my books on Twitter or Facebook or something. I'm adding more to the community, and that way I'm giving them more than just the books. And if they're interested, that's great. Then they'll check out the books.
Yeah, for comics, you guys have a great resource here in Edmonton. I know that because I distribute to Edmonton, and one of the people that gives me a lot of love is Jay over at Happy Harbor. He's they all had opened a store out in Vancouver, and so I was even getting my books out there. So he's a wonderful resource, very, very, very supportive. There's a lot of other places, and that's kind of the nice thing for comics. You kind of can talk to the manager of the store or the purchasing agent, whoever's in there. Just talk to them, because you can find. I mean, I went down to Portland and I have books down there because I just went to the stores and I'm like, hi, can I take books? And they'll be like, yeah, we'd love to. And ask if they'll do consignment sales. Some will, some won't. Just make sure that you're telling them though that it's your own book, that you are an indie publisher, and you want to be able to put your books in their store, not comic books that like your old Marvel or whatever. big difference there. But yeah, and then with comics for distribution for you guys, you can do things like if you go through Kablam, when you're printing out there, it's a POD, which means it's print on demand. Plus, they also have an option for Indie Planet, where they'll do a digital distribution of your comics as well. So you kind of have that door as well, and it's pretty well known for a lot of comic creators as well, especially people who are looking for especially indie markets.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Have you looked into getting on Comixology at all? Have you?
Yeah, that's another one. Like that's what I'm saying. Like you want to go online is really, really helpful that way. You can have a little more. You can build stuff like if you're doing for comics, you can kind of start off as a web comic, and if anyone's familiar with Freak Angels, is where you do like one page at a time, and then after you're done releasing all the pages, you can collect it into the book, and then sell it that way. Pardon me?
Was that what color did you say?
Freak Angels. Freak Angels.
Freak Angels, yeah. It was by Warren Ellis. It was a while ago, but they were one of the first models to start doing that, where they're actually releasing full pages of comics rather than just like a quick strip, like gag strips. So it's interesting to do a lot of research on other comics and see what they are doing, because it kind of helps you to like give you ideas. You can model from there, and you can kind of get, once you get a little more firm and cemented into what works for you, because each person is going to have a slightly different marketing tool, you have different strengths. You want to kind of play into whatever your strengths are for selling and marketing.
To further add on to that about chapter or 4,000 words, and you release enough and you can get feedback from the community while you're writing it, and essentially once you're done you can grab all and compile all that text and then publish it into an ebook or physical book. And it's a good supportive community. They'll actually give you feedback on your work and they'll tell you if it's bad before you invest too much time into it.
And that one also has an image setting on it, because you can do literary works on it and you can also do images. Plus it also has an audio option, which is also cool that we need to try and test out. So yeah, you can have that. You can have your book or comic book being like, you can read it and then have like some sort of like music in the background. Be careful on whether or not it's copyrighted or not, so you may have to kind of look into that a bit. But it's kind of a neat thing if you've already started writing or you were creating a comic or story and you have a soundtrack in your mind like many people do, you can kind of put that to your book and it's an idea to go with.
Yeah. Yes.
Just to add on to comic, I found a bunch of royalty-free songs on the YouTube audio library. And sometimes you just add a description and it don't cost you anything if you want to add that to your file.
Exactly. Like you can use, there's a lot of free music out there, so I mean you can kind of find what's jiving for you. Yeah, definitely.
One thing I want to add too as well, to the gentleman who asked about marketing, specifically with physical books and stores, definitely keep a spreadsheet of your contacts in those stores, because the management changes a lot and your books will get lost. So definitely keep all of the contracts they give you and names, numbers, and the store location, so that way you've got all the info to back you up. Because some of the big stores like Chapters get really busy, so
That's universal, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For comics
people,
too. Yeah.
That's universal.
It's, your stuff will get lost. I've had in-store managers just need to grab a copy quickly to grab the ISBN and punch it into the system, and then their shift ends, and then I'll get my book back. So I've already lost like $15 because it just vanished. So keep track of everything as closely as you can, because these things can happen.
Also, guys, just so you guys are all aware, ISBNs here in Canada, we're really super lucky. We have free ISBNs.
Which every book of any kind needs, and that's just kind of the barcode you get in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you recall what the site was?
It's just like if you go to, it's the library. I'm trying to remember, not that. You can go online though and you can find it. Just go to like any Canadian
Google.
website.
Yeah, if you Google
totally,
ISBN Canada, you'll get the actual site. And you can register.
But it's not like a straightforward name. It's like something like library something.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're really friendly there. I've talked to them and they're like, yeah, but you also keep in mind there's also separate ones for periodicals, which comics might fall under, because you have your ISBNs for just the books. And if you're only publishing like once a year or something like that, it's fine. You can kind of get away with that. But if you're doing comics and you're doing them like on a monthly basis or like on anything more than like 3 or 4 times a year, you might want to look into the periodicals, which is a different ISBN method as well.
And that's something you really want to consider is ISBN. Like you can print copies for people to test and read, and you can mail it out to them. But when you're ready to kind of seal the deal and get your book or comic out there, your ISBN is going to be the first thing you want, because that's how a store identifies their book. They keep track of how many sales, they scan that in. That's how you can get awards for like bestseller of the month or something. So definitely get your ISBN when you're ready to finalize it.
Mm-hmm. And you can put, if you have a graphic novel, which kind of borderline, is borderline there between literary and comic. If you have a graphic novel, you can also put that in chapters as well, because that's kind of your bridge there. So I mean, if you're doing a bunch of like small, what I call floppies, you can have those in your comic shops, and then once you get a certain amount, you can redistribute that as a trade. And then you can take it to places like Chapters. They are really super friendly about that as well.
Yes.
So when you get your ISBN number, and if you're going to be making hard copy printed off of like CreateSpace or whatever. So like a little thing where you're like, this is my number.
Pretty much, yep. That's what you do, yeah.
But the thing is, they'll offer you numbers from CreateSpace. Those are only for CreateSpace themselves. Plus, it also, there's like this weird thing I heard that they may actually be using that as kind of like a method of you're publishing through them, so they're kind of the publisher.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of be careful about that. That's why you kind of want to keep your own ISBN numbers on there wherever possible.
Yeah.
So if you buy one separately, you can be like, I don't want to use your number, I want to put in my number.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
We have 5 minutes, so I just want to make sure we get anyone's questions before we keep chatting. Yes.
Quick question, how receptive are the big chains to self-published author to get a book in their shelves?
It's been very dependent because it's, at least with Chapters and Indigo, they've always been managed by it's all based on per manager. So I've had some that have been really supportive and really wanting to help. Then I've had some.
They don't just shut the door and say talk to Toronto?
No, they changed their process. Actually, like in 2005 or something, they completely revamped it. Before you had to like mail 10 copies out to Toronto, and then fingers crossed that they'll say yes and let you have it on consignment, and then you can do a book signing. But now it's per store, which is way easier.
Super easy, yeah.
Yes.
I know that there will always be print aficionados, but do you feel that like there's a lot more electronic sales now, or is it still well worth doing paper?
Personally, I found I do better with paper. I don't know. My dad was a salesman, so I can go door to door and talk to stores, and I found I can sell more books that way. The online world is much more saturated because it's very easy to self-publish, and that even though it has a lot of benefits, it can create the market there's a lot of white noise, and rising above that can be tough. But utilizing both, I found, is to be the most effective as you build up a fan base with social media and whatnot, so you gain more of a loyal following, and they'll help champion your books as well to their friends.
Yeah, I think they need to be kind of done hand in hand, really, because you have your electronic book, which some people are going to get, some people won't. It all depends on your market too, because some people really like their paper, they like their stuff in the hand, and some people are more electronic based. It also depends on who your audience is too, because some people gravitate more to certain authors because they're print. Some people gravitate to other authors because they're electronic. You kind of get to know who your audience is.
Yeah, that's kind of a fun fact about the literary world. Erotica happens to be the top ebook genre out there. So if you ever want, this was good advice I got, was if you ever want to see the leading and cutting edge of the ebook world, follow some of the top end erotica artists, and you'll see what's really being done.
Yeah, definitely see what they're doing, because they're doing something right, guys. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
After publishing or getting published, I would love to write for a comic kind of thing, but I don't have the artist skills. So what do you recommend for networking, or since the publishing world can establish a network for reaching out in communities to get connected to artists?
DeviantArt. I would start hanging out in DeviantArt forum, like just going through DeviantArt. You can kind of select people through there. Okay. They're really like that's where you're gonna find a lot of the artists who are gonna be putting up their work. You want to vet carefully, just because there's a lot of a big history of like artists kind of flaking out. So you kind of want to make sure that they've finished a few books. I mean, in an ideal world, you want to be able to take the person who's nice and fresh, but sometimes that's not always great, because what a person thinks they might be a great artist, but they can't do a book, because the book takes a lot of determination and a lot of stuff to go through, especially if it's an ongoing series. Mm-hmm. Even if it's a graphic novel, those are really long time commitments, and they're kind of grueling. So you have to know your artist and kind of sort of follow and see how much work they've already gotten completed.
I was just going to say, there's a good Facebook group for connecting comic writers and artists. And I think that's exactly what it's called, connecting comic writers and artists. And that's especially good for a writer, because a lot of artists don't like being approached by writers that much, but if you put it on there, then the artists who are interested will respond to you, and then they will give you.
Kind of, feel around. There's like pencil jack and things like that. You can kind of just sort of take a boo in and go, hi, I'm a writer and I'm looking for artists. Can you point me in the right direction? Because you also want to kind of find out. It helps if you're a writer, it helps if you're visually minded. If you aren't visually minded, then you're going to need to have a lot more help from education. Yeah, I could go on about that on another panel.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And just one other thing I found is, it's good to have, at least a little bit of money to offer the artist out of the box, like even if it's like $10 a page or $25 a page, because, artists, you ask them to do it, and I'll pay you later. A lot of them aren't going to bite on that.
You just have to be careful. I think the best way to do it would be as a percentage, because that would give them that they have some money there. When they're able to complete, then they get more. I mean, that's fairly basic.
Yeah.
It would be a larger chunk, like about 50%, and then because you wouldn't want to pay them for all of it right away.
Right. Yeah, but you have to usually give them something so that they know that you're going to follow through.
Exactly.
So we're at 5. We'll take that last question, and that's. We're at 5:15. Oh, perfect. Okay, great. Go ahead.
For your books, where do you get your inspiration for ideas from?
Inspiration? Movies have been the biggest one. Movies and my own life. It's kind of been the two that I've gone to, and I found that literary happened to be the best way to get the stories I wanted to tell out, because you get to really dive deep into a character's mind or a certain moral or philosophy more than you can in a movie or, say, a video game. So that's why I chose that medium to tell the stories, but movies have been the biggest inspiration for me. Yes?
How did you find the motivation to start writing your stories that are floating in your head and actually sit down and write?
Ooh, yeah, a story that comes in my head. I actually keep a notebook by my bedside because I get some weird dreams, like everyone. So I'll write them down, and I've got like a big idea book, and that's kind of the first, I guess, birthing of that story is in that notebook. So I'll take a look, and it'll be like one sentence or something, and then I'll try to think about it from there, and from there I'll try to put together a story outline. And story outlines can be either like bullet point forms on a single page, or it's a little more visual where you have a mountain, which is the general plot direction, then the climax, and then the lead down to the finish. So I try to do it from a very systematic point of view and think big picture before I dive straight into the words, because I find I can get easily lost. So I find I like to think big and then drill in small. And
you're so much more organized than I am. Me, I have pieces of paper everywhere that have like story ideas, and then I mean it's a very similar story as to with books, like with literary. With comics, it's a very similar thing. It's you kind of want to have an outline, so you kind of have an idea. You can do a stream of consciousness, but and especially if you're doing like a page at a time, because I've been doing a couple of them like that, where I did a page at a time. It can kind of take you down a weird path, though. When we compile it, you can go from like when you compile it as from pages to one book. It doesn't always translate, so you kind of like to be aware of your flow throughout the whole entire story, because you can kind of do that, but that's why it's kind of helpful to have an outline, or at least a vague idea of where you're going first.
yeah, so it can be tough. Another thing that I actually found for writing stories to be helpful was the November event called NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel November Writing Month or something like that. Mm-hmm. And NaNoWriMo is for 30 days, you have to hash out 50,000 words. So you just got to keep typing and average out around like 1,600 words a day. That's one way to get you motivated. You'll write some of the worst stuff, but
well, and for done. Comics people, we got our own.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's called yeah. Some of you guys know it already. It's where you do like a comic book in a day. Yeah, 24 hours, 1 page per hour basically, and you have yourself a book. It's kind of crappy.
Yeah.
And by the time you're done, you are usually really, really dead tired. But I actually know that Happy Harbor does put that on, so you guys should take a boo at it. If for nothing else, it's great to kind of like do a creative thing. You're not supposed to take in any outlines, but you can. But even if you have like a vague idea in your head of like something, but that's where you go down the weird paths. But it's a lot of fun and it's really rewarding to kind of go. And it also can give you a lot of self-esteem that I finished a book, and for NaNoWriMo, same sort of thing. I finished a book.
Yeah, so that's another way to get your story out there. Really kind of gets you working. Yes.
Do either of you have any experience with Kickstarter or Patreon for getting started on?
You know what? For Kickstarter, I haven't, only because I don't feel that I have a big enough following. You want to have an audience already built in before you do the Kickstarter, or have friends who know friends. Like you need to be able to have like a big group. You can't. It won't work if you just know 3 or 4 people and you're a hermit. You have to really have like a following.
Yeah, and it's a whole other. I haven't done it either personally. I don't feel my circle of influence is large enough for that, and it becomes a real big. It's essentially like you're writing a proposal.
Yeah, but except for with comics, though, with books you're going to write as a proposal.
Yes.
With comics, though, you're going to want to use it the way you'd use for pre-orders. So you want to be able to have it all. You have a very strong idea. It can't be like some sort of ether thing. You have to have some concept pages going. Have a really really good defined plan. You want to basically have a business plan already set out there. You're showing people your business plan, and also that pre-order the book because it's already these are your fans you're selling to. You aren't going to be selling to a lot of other people. You can kind of use it for a little bit of promotions, but from what I've been seeing, it doesn't really work that way. It works better with you already have your fan base. They just come to you and they're like, yeah, we're going to help you out. If you want to do something where you're trying to raise awareness, you might want to go with something more like a Patreon page.
Yes.
Okay. Do you hire an editor? An editor?
Oh yeah.
And
yes.
And if you do, what do you look for in an editor for your work for publishing? And what kind of things do you expect to ask from them when you send it to an editor?
With an editor, I was looking for one that was a little more flexible on her or his schedule and pricing, which was a huge thing when you're starting up because it's expensive. And some editors will only do syntax, some will only do sentence structure, some will only do story structure, and others will only do style. So there's all these different things you got to think about. And
it helps if you know what kind of editing you need. And for comics, you still need an editor in a different way, though. With comics, it gets more complicated because you guys have for literary people, it's the words and the structure and everything like that. Then with comics, you have the other element of the artwork and how the artwork plays in with the literary work because it's the whole story and how does that work. So you need to think about before you go to the editor. You need to know what you need from that editor, and you have to have a really good set of expectations for yourself and what you want to have as a result.
Is everyone here from Alberta? Yes? Okay. Yeah, awesome. Because there's the Writers Guild of Alberta, and they are an exceptionally helpful resource. It's like a 1-year membership, like $80 or $120 or something, so it ends up being pretty cheap monthly, and you get access to the huge archive of editors, agents, publishers, the whole board, and really, really helpful. So if you want to go fishing for local editors, that's something I'd recommend too.
Yeah, I wish I could give you guys more support for comics, but it's a little more off the beaten path, and you kind of have to be able to find somebody who has that balance. So like you can find people who are very literary and can like look at the words and do your proofreading for you, but for the artwork, you may have to find somebody You may have to have a couple of different editors for that process. It gets a little more challenging.
Not as structured as the comic.
It
compared to the
is, but
writing.
it isn't. Like, I mean, if you're going through, this is where indie comics are a little more challenging to do because you have to have somebody who has a visual eye. So, if you know anybody, for example, if you know people who might be in film, they'll have a better idea too because they have that visual and the story structure. So they might be able to help you and kind of guide you on their way. Yeah, I wish I had better stuff for you guys. We need to build a guild.
Awesome. Yeah, so any other questions or going pretty good? Cool. Yeah, so that's kind of the best advice I could offer. Marketing is a lot of work. It becomes a full-time thing. I would recommend at least dedicating an hour a day to it. So it does become kind of a part-time job, but seeing long-term results would help a lot by doing that. And especially with self-publishing, whether it is with comics or with writing, you want to spend more time working on your actual profession, but because you're wearing all these hats, as long as you do one thing a day to move your career forward, you're still ahead of the race rather than doing nothing. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just a little thing every day. I mean, my father had a saying, as long as you do one sentence, and I took that to mean sentence or line because I did drawing. So either one of those, one a day, you're going to build something. So, and he went on to write 53 novels. So one sentence a day, guys, or one line. One line at a time.
You can find both of us online too, so if you have further questions, let us know. We're both on Twitter, right?
Oh yeah, Twitter.
Okay, Facebook too, and yeah, or even after the panel here, ask us some questions.
Exactly.
And, yeah, hope you enjoyed the show.
Awesome.